I'm Ryan Pack.
And I'm Nicole Barlow.
And this is Soundtrack Your Life, where we talk to a guest about a soundtrack that they feel connected to. Today we have Rachel Brodsky on the podcast. She's an LA-based entertainment writer who writes for Stereogum. She also hosts the NSYNC podcast with Aviv Rubenstein. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have you. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about NSYNC?
Sure. Well, NSYNC, I think, shares a lot in common with Soundtrack Your Life because there's a soundtrack element to the show, but basically we celebrate moments of music, like great music moments on screen. So we pick like one scene, one song, and we break it down. We choose classic movies or shows. We do talk about TV and film. So we choose classic episodes and movies, but we also talk about newer, like more zeitgeisty moments. Like we have a long time sync episode about The Last of Us, which was popping a few months ago. And we have a Wednesday Goo Goo Muck episode, but our first ever episode was about my all-time favorite music sync ever on TV, which is the series finale of 6 Feet Under and how Sia's Breathe Me closed it out. And we try to have music supervisors guest whenever possible to talk about like if they're the decision makers behind those syncs and have them talk about how that song ended up on the like in that scene and like what it did. We kind of break down like why it was successful and like what it did for the moment and we have a Yellow Jackets episode coming up. So yeah, it's fun. I like to say that it's a pretty elastic concept because while it is one song to screen sync that we talk about per episode, we also tend to like it's not so like hyper focused that we don't like talk about other really great music moments in any given movie or show because like we often have a really hard time even just choosing. So,
well, we're so happy to have you, and we are thrilled to know that you love a tangent because there will be many tangents I think today.
I live on tangents.
Just hanging out bread,
it's the AD brain. It's like one story leads to another. The brain we have like Russian doll brains.
That's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, with that said, I guess this is a good segue into why did you choose Dirty Dancing for us, other than the fact that it's iconic, amazing,
and one of the best-selling soundtracks of all time.
Oh, well, so I saw that you hadn't done a Dirty Dancing episode yet, and I think it was just top of mind because Aviv, my co-host on NSYNC, and I were in the process of picking another, like what was our next episode going to be. And when we first started conceptualizing what NSYNC would be, we made just a giant master list of ideas, and we both just like added to it, just like free writing stuff we wanted to do, and that one was really high up on the list, just Dirty Dancing in the last scene, the iconic I've had the time of my life scene with the lift and all of that. So I think it was just like really already in my brain when you guys emailed me, and I was like, well, I've seen this movie probably 3 or 4 million times. I don't have to even rewatch it because it's just in my DNA. And likewise, I remember having, I think like my parents, I had a lot of cassette tapes as a kid in the 90s, but my parents also had a pretty like major collection of cassettes and vinyl. And I remember how they had like the double cassette tape because they were, I think this was after the initial soundtrack to the movie dropped, and then to kind of like keep the train and like capitalize on the film's success, the like production company or RCA Records released like a double album. So my parents had like the double cassette tape in like this drawer where we had like tape organizers, and there that was. And I was just like never without my Walkman as a kid, and then later my Discman, and later my MP3 player, and so on. But I just remember like, I love this movie, and oh, there's the music. I can listen to the music whenever I want, and like listening to the tapes, like just at home, chilling out, just thinking. And I never really listened to any soundtrack before that had like a mix of the actual like the pop songs, the songs that like the diegetic songs, but also the score, because like the tapes had some of like the themes, like the score element intermingled a bit with those songs. So, and I just remember thinking like, wow, this is new and interesting. And that's just, this was my long-winded answer of like, well, this is just in my bones, and I could talk about this like forever. Yeah.
It's so funny that you said that, because prior to I also did minimal research here, because it is like it's a fiber of my being. It's not even something that I can think about being without. It is that coded and imprinted onto me. I can remember the staying power of this movie being so great that it came out when I was like fairly young. And then I can remember like later being like in those adolescent like slumber parties, and you'd like be playing like Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board, and then like turn on Dirty Dancing, because it was like, it had this like entire zeitgeisty thing where I think if you didn't live like the late 80s, early 90s, it's kind of hard to explain. But Patrick Swayze was huge.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this movie like coasted to success on the basis of like just Patrick Swayze's like inordinate amount of riz. He was like our Austin Butler, okay? Like he was the Austin Butler of like the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, his charm just like exploded off the screen. And what's funny is like, I don't even think as a youngin that I looked at Patrick Swayze and thought, gee, what a beautiful man. But in like adulthood, I think I've just been like, wow, like I've like the movie has grown with me, and I've like grown with the movie. Like it's really fun to revisit at different stages in life. And that is one of the new developments. Like as I got older, I was like, oh, he sure is a beautiful man, and wow, he is an amazing dancer. And also like, what's funny is that the Houseman family, like Jennifer Grey's family in the movie, always reminded me a little bit of my mother's family. It's kind of hard to explain, but like, so I think Kelly Bishop, who plays Jennifer Grey's mother, she has like reddish hair, and my grandmother used to have that exact same hair color. She like really resembled Kelly Bishop. And Jerry Orbach, her father, Jennifer Grey's father, like really reminded me of my grandfather, just like the way that their faces and like their height, like they just looked a lot alike. Their personalities I don't think were super similar, but like they physically resembled each other. And my mom always reminded me a little bit of Baby, because people always seem to like underestimate Baby. Like they kind like, at least her family kind of underestimates her. Like they have this very specific idea of who she is, which changes across, and which is what makes the movie a coming of age movie. And but she is the younger sister who's a little bit overshadowed by her older sister, who is just like really outgoing, obviously an extrovert, wants to be in all the group activities, and they get along, but like they're nothing alike. And my mother has an older sister, and in their younger years, like even the way that my aunt kind of looked and sounded, and she also did do some singing. I remember she was the music teacher at my like preschool and kindergarten, all the way back when I was really, really young. And I even thought their voices sounded alike when they sang. And my mom was kind of like a caterpillar waiting to become a butterfly, I think, in the whole context of her family. So I think like I watched the movie so much too because I was like, I feel like I'm watching my mom.
I know her.
I don't know how else to explain it, but like that, I think I felt like a weird, you know how when you're really, really young and like your parents are just like your heroes and they're the only adults that you kind of have to like base off adulthood off of. Well,
Right.
I think that's a little bit of what was going on too when I would watch Dirty Dancing and just seeing. And plus, I come from a Jewish family, and while the movie never explicitly says like this is a Jewish family and they're at a Jewish resort in the Catskills, I think that too on some like subconscious level was resonating with me because we didn't go to a resort, but I think my older members of my family easily could have. Like that's a completely plausible like vacation for them. The older because like resorts, like they even talk about in the movie, like this is a mid-century thing that's dying and the 60s and 70s and like the culture changes will kill it off and it's like the end of it, end of innocence. But yeah, I mean I went to like summer camp in the Catskills, so it just feels very like northeastern Jewish.
That's so funny to me because I grew up here. And so growing up in California, you don't know where the Catskills are. I'm like a 9-year-old in California. I don't know where the Catskills are. I don't have that, level of knowledge, but you also kind of, I think that's part of why you get invested in it because there's actually some really nice like world building that happens. And like this whole kind of early 60s revival thing that they do in this resort setting is really like effective. I think it's effective too because the screenwriter Eleanor Bergstein, it's all kind of like cut from her life. It's based on her own life experience, both going to these summer camps, but then also eventually becoming kind of the Johnny Castle and becoming a dance instructor herself. So, credit to her, honestly, for bringing something that has, I think, a very strong POV and also has a lot of things in it that, and I know we're here to talk about the music. We're going to get to it. A lot of things in it that are like, I think would kind of be shocking today. Like this movie has like, on her insistence, this movie has a backroom abortion in it.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. It's totally like ahead of its time. Honestly, when I was young and when I first watched it, so a little bit of more exposition for me, but we taped this movie off of TV. And so for years, I would just rewatch Dirty Dancing with all the 80s commercials stuck in there. And for years, I didn't even watch Dirty Dancing without like commercial breaks. So now, of course, I can, but like I did not realize when I was really young, and I'm probably going to talk about this again when Aviv and I record our episode on the movie, but like I did not realize for years that this movie was like Dirty Dancing was meant to take place in the early 60s because of how 80s it is. And it's just such a mishmash of 60s culture, late 50s music, early 60s, and then this like synthy echoing drum machines, like saxophone, like just turn up all the sax all the way. Although I think though, like thinking about it again, like the 60s and the 80s definitely like they both of those decades have sax in common. I read somewhere that like the sound, some of the songs in the soundtrack sound like more like the guitar is turned up on the soundtrack but turned down in the film because the like guitar wasn't such a presence yet, but saxophone was. So anyway, like I just did not, this movie existed in its own like dimension for me and only now as an adult like I can see like the like the sloppy Venn diagram of the 60s and the 80s and how like the snake is eating its tail.
And it really is like it is a weird mishmash of like things that are straight like Be My Baby from the Ronettes, and then you have the most famous track from the soundtrack, which is Time of My Life. And then Time of My Life has this vocal by Bill Medley from the Righteous Brothers. So it's kind of this it's a very weird like 60s by way of the 80s kind of feel that does like exist out of time in some ways.
Yeah. And honestly, like even just for this podcast, like recording, I had never really done such a deep dive. Like I've been listening to these songs mostly in the context of rewatching Dirty Dancing for decades. But other than the Ronettes and let's see, like Solomon Burke, and like Otis Redding, and like Mickey and Sylvia, outside of those really famous songs, I don't think I'd ever like really done super amount of research into like Eric Carmen and writing Hungry Guys, because that's super 80s. And and I also like, I always really loved the song Yes, which I read was supposed to go to Mary. Do you remember her last
Mary
name?
Wells, I think. Is it Mary Wells? Yeah, and then they kind of swapped one Mary for another, and we're like, I guess this is fine.
Mary spelled differently, but who like has a 60s moment, 70s moment, because like she sang with the Rolling Stones, but I can't imagine anyone else ever singing Yes. There's just so much like excitement behind it.
Well, there's a lot of happy accidents on this movie that I think stem partly from the fact that a lot of people didn't want it to happen and walked away from it and thought it was like straight up radioactive. Ryan and I were kind of talking about this before the podcast, how a lot of people just rejected this because they thought it was going to be a complete failure.
Or they thought it was going to be porn.
Or that.
Yeah. They thought it was like straight up. And also I think because like Vestron, their film, their film distribution production company was so unknown. Like I don't like what they had never actually done like a feature length film before. So nobody really took this. I mean, it's like as indie gets for that time period. And I think Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey were both like relative unknowns.
Right.
And and like this movie like got made because all like and I actually read Jennifer Grey's autobiography, which is great if you haven't read it. It's super entertaining and well written. But in there she talks a lot about like bringing her own clothes to play Baby. But so it was like very DIY for its time.
Yeah, there was almost not even a soundtrack.
Yeah. One thing that I wondered about was like how they even, and like I didn't really see much information about this, but like how much did it even cost to get like an Otis Redding song?
Right. I mean, then maybe because it was like partly responsible for this kind of like revival of those like whatever you want to call them, golden oldies or like soul hits from back in the day. Maybe it didn't cost them very much. Maybe like the licensing for that wasn't wild in 1988.
Yeah. It's just a different landscape that I mean, today I feel like those songs would cost a lot. Like definitely Be My Baby would cost a ton of money.
Absolutely.
Anything by Otis Redding, anything by Solomon Burke. But I think that because of the way that this movie introduced all these songs to me, because for me I hadn't heard most of these songs until watching this movie, and I started watching this movie when I was like probably 7 or 8.
Which is honestly like I make this comment a lot to friends and stuff, but I feel like if you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, like there was this very like divorced, like divorcee energy that you had as a little kid because you were like watching Dirty Dancing and listening to Celine Dion, and like Annie Lennox was walking on broken glass. Like you had all this drama in your life, even though you were like whatever 8 to 11 years old, and you had like no claim to any of those feelings and no clue what was going on. But there was something like very, I don't know, intriguing about that kind of like entry point into the adult world. And a lot of these songs have such, they're love songs. They're very like adult themed love songs.
They're also really horny songs.
Yeah, totally. No, completely. This is a horny ass movie.
Yeah, but we didn't have genius.com back then to tell us what these songs really meant.
No, we had to draw our own conclusions, and we were children, and the conclusions were, wrong. And then later you're like, oh, that's what it.
Like what really stood out for me was just like how the 80s and the 60s are so like overlaid on top of each other from the styles, like the clothes to the hair. But most specifically in the music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like because they're dancing at the very end to what is clearly a deeply 80s song. Like this could not, it's like, not to say it's like, there's nothing innocent really sounding. I mean, I feel like early 60s songs of that era, I mean, we're like approaching more like suggestive songs, and like Woodstock hasn't happened yet, but a lot of it is like just deeply innuendo.
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's completely innuendo. It's very that like, oh, Chuck Berry, or like, it's that feel of like, it means something, but they're not allowed to like outright say it, which kind of, I think, like fits the whole like mood of this like backroom Dirty Dancing, thing that's happening in the Catskills. But yeah, it's like the fact that they thought they could get away with having that climactic song just be like sung partly by Bill Medley, and that would be fine. Like that would put it in the era is kind of funny.
Yeah. Like it did look like they, the producers really tried to get artists who had hits in the 60s to like come back and write for this era. And like it, and it sounds like for them it was kind of an easy yes, even though they had to go through so many people at first for a lot of these songs. Like I like they wanted like Kim Carnes, I think, to like be the female part on I've Had the Time of My Life. And most of these people were just like, nah, I've never heard of Vestron, and I've never like heard of the actors. Like a lot of the time to like get a big name, you just like need to already have like showing your work. You need to already have like this like resume of like stuff you've achieved in order to get anyone like of note to.
Right. And it's funny too, because like there are these little like pieces of oral history where the producers were talking about like basically chasing Bill Medley, like he's the biggest celebrity in the world. Like, oh, you're the voice of the 60s, Bill Medley, you gotta do this movie. And even he's like unconvinced, right?
Yeah, he said no at first because I think his wife was having a baby.
He was having a baby, which is, I don't even know how old he was.
And he said, I promised that I would be there.
For this one.
Yeah, for this one, I promised my wife I would be there for the birth of the baby.
Yeah, what a hero, really. Well, because Bill Medley and the Righteous Brothers were just coming off of, if I'm understanding the timeline correctly, like they had just had like a huge resurgence with You've Lost That Loving Feeling from Top Gun. And so there's also like a really little, like a funny tidbit of a story where Bill Medley talks about like, they're going on all these tours all of a sudden because now he has like 2 like massive pop hits that are charting, but everyone in the audience is like a 13 or 14-year-old girl. And they're all like singing along to these songs that are not meant for kids. It's just like you said, Rachel, like they're very like horny songs, right? Yeah. Weird. And he tells his manager, like, this is weird. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I guess his manager was just like, well, you should sing to the moms and then take the money and run.
Yeah.
And then Medley and the Righteous Brothers show up again for Patrick Swayze in Ghost in 1990 with Unchained Melody.
Shit, you're right. I didn't even think of that. Man.
I do have, speaking of Patrick Swayze, I do have like a long-standing love for She's Like the Wind.
Oh, same. And like, here's the thing, okay? Like, don't come for me. She's Like the Wind is like objectively not an amazing song, right? Like, if you were to divorce it from the idea of this movie and from like the absolute like raw charisma that Patrick Swayze possesses, it's maybe not a great song. But the fact that they didn't have enough songs in the soundtrack, and Patrick Swayze was just kicking it backstage, like, well, I've got one that I wrote, and
for another movie.
For another movie that didn't, you know, like he's like, I can just use this here. Like, first of all, like Patrick Swayze, let's take a second to respect Swayze. Swayze, action star, romantic film star. Ryan's laughing at me because I'm going to have my Swayze rant, but let me have this moment. Classically trained in ballet, like the movement that this man can like possess, like how he inhabits his body, like not like before since, like he's incredible. It's incredible the things that he can pull off, and one of them is pulling off this song and being able to pull a line. The first line of this song is "She's like the wind through my tree."
Yeah, I mean, I read that this song had a few rewrites because he brought like the bare bones, like what he'd written, and then like his co-writers just reconfigured it a few times. They got it to a place. I really just I like the storytelling aspect and like how it cues to Baby and Johnny's like arc as characters, and how like the movie has so many points of like societal division. And this, and then She's Like the Wind, like say they like, it's funny because like you don't think much about what happens after everybody leaves the resort. Like, does Baby go off to college and continue to date Johnny? Probably not, because life will continue. I mean, if they could get over like, if they could get over the like socioeconomic atmosphere of this like Catskills resort, it's like that's like a microcosm for the rest of the world. And like She's Like the Wind, while it's cheesy and silly, and I don't think Patrick Swayze is a great singer, although this is a great song because it really just like hits you in the feels. Like he definitely captures that like, I'm not worthy, she's better than me, even quote, she's out of my league, and her family obviously comes from money, and he's kind of had to like be a gig worker. And like I don't know, I love the song's kind of narrative placement within the movie. And yeah, also like I'm guilty of singing that song just like to my pets. I don't.
Do you have dogs or cats? I just want to know who the song is.
One of each. One of each. Yeah.
Why not? So you've got like Johnny and a baby.
Yeah.
The song works though. Like some songs, like despite yourself and despite like your, you know, whatever, how you want to criticize them on the basis of like their musicality or whatever, like you can't deny them. It works in the movie. I think it works in life. There are a lot of songs that come up on this podcast where it's like, do you sing them to your pets? Like, of course you fucking do. Don't lie. Like, don't lie to me and tell me that you haven't like belted that song at some point in your life, because
again, like none of these, I probably wouldn't listen to like any of these songs in my car, like apart from the movie, other than maybe these Arms of Mine, or Love Man, or Be My Baby, or like Big Girls Don't Cry. Like that's a classic.
I love that Otis Redding comes up twice. Like you brought up Otis and how did they even afford him? I think on the original soundtrack those songs don't appear. I might be mistaken. I think they.
No, you're correct.
Yeah, you're correct. I actually went So I was looking at like the original soundtrack track listing, and I was like, but this is not all of it. So then I jumped to the 20th anniversary edition,
Mm.
which I think is also like the because they had like that double CD, double tape, double vinyl that like I listened to because like back when I was a kid, they had like the Johnny's theme and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the instrumentals and like the I've had the time of my life instrumental. I remember listening to all of those songs on tapes, like on cassette tape.
Called More Dirty Dancing.
Yes. Yes.
Why wouldn't it be called that?
It's just that's what it is.
Yeah, down and dirty.
Yeah.
Dirtier dancing.
Dirtier dancing.
No, they made the right choice. Of course, that's what it was going to be called. Yeah, I think of like Otis Redding. I love Otis Redding, and I think of him as being like, I don't know, the soundtrack for like Longing. And so I love that he's very perfect, like mixed into this kind of pastiche of songs that they chose for this movie. But what's weird is that like it's just like you said, I have just as much love for these like objectively kind of like tinny and terribly produced like some of these 80s songs that I do for like these classics. And I don't know what that says about me. I think it hit at the right time, where you just like you really held on to them. I just want to like Hungry Eyes like still comes into my head. Why? I don't know. It shouldn't. I'm not listening to it in the car either. I don't seek it out, but it's there.
Yeah, you still know all the words.
It's all the words. It's sad.
I also do like how like there's a lot of talk in the film about, I mean, they name a number of like the cha-cha and the merengue and there's like some like Latin, like mid-century Latin music that like gets its shine as well on the extended soundtrack, which is really cool. And that was probably my first like taste of Latin pop like for my life just by watching this movie.
Yeah, I mean, you can really pinpoint this movie as like an exposure to a lot of different things and a lot of different like genres of music that if you're a kid, you've probably never heard before, artists that you've never heard before, which is what's beautiful about soundtracks in the first place. I think it's also got some kind of nice like little deep cuts that maybe you didn't hear on if you grew up in Southern California, like K Earth Radio as a kid. Obviously Love is Strange by Mickey and Sylvia comes to mind because it's just like a really great like call and response song, but I don't know if it's one that like really had a lot of pop culture prominence at that time, but the scene between the two of them I think brought that to like a whole different place. Like
where else has I feel like Love is Strange has popped up a lot like since then.
I'm sure. I like it's another one of those things where it becomes like such a feature in culture that I'm sure it's been parodied. I'm sure it's been like reused.
Okay. This I did not know, but according to Wikipedia, Love is Strange appeared in Deep Throat. Did you know this?
No. What?
Yeah, that
was right. This movie is a porno.
Yeah, it was apparently featured in Deep Throat. Okay. Well, obviously its most prominent placement was in Dirty Dancing, but so the song was parodied in New York Dolls' song Trash in 1973, where singer David Johansen quotes, "How do you call your lover boy? Trash." And later, the song is covered by the fictional Scottish band The Majestics on the BBC television series Tutti Frutti, also in 87. And then the spoken word part is referenced by Louis Reed at the end of his song Beginning of a Great Adventure on 1989's New York. And he married Sylvia Morales in 1980. This is fun.
Shut up.
A lot of this I just did not know. Sylvia, okay, it was also, Love is Strange was also in Badlands, which didn't Badlands have, wasn't that a Patrick Swayze movie? Am I getting this right?
That I don't know.
I don't think so.
No, maybe I'm thinking of something else. Don't quote me on that. Yeah. Okay, I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of another movie. But
Okay, but
yeah.
regardless, all of those different like connective, like that's the best rabbit hole ever.
Yeah. Oh, it goes on. It continues. So in 1995, it was used in Casino, Martin Scorsese's Casino, and then it's also used in The Sopranos and The Wire. So
Wow.
HBO likes Love is Strange.
And gangster movies.
Yeah.
Or in shows.
Those are also all like wildly different things for that to like crop up in. So yeah, again, like a testament to a track that you can use for a lot of different ends, I suppose. But I've heard trash so many times, and I feel like I've never ever registered that there's like that bit in it that's a reference to the song. That's cool as hell.
I think the only song like of all the 80s songs that were written for the movie that I would listen to apart from the movie is, where is it? I just want to find it, guys. It's been a long day.
No worries.
Why am Mary Clayton's Yes.
Oh yeah, it's a great song.
That is a really fun music video, which I watched earlier today.
Nice. I wish that I had the presence of mind to rewatch like all the music videos connected to this movie, because I bet they're so great.
They at least the ones I watched, so like I watched She's Like the Wind and Yes, and they both have a thing where you see like the performers, Patrick Swayze and Mary Clayton, separately like singing, and then they like have these cool like kind of fade in, fade out scenes from the movie itself. Very similar to like the opening credits, I think, to Dirty Dancing, where it's like all in black and white and kind of slowed down to look extra dramatic. And the music videos, they kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, visualizing. A lot of like crossfades and
a lot of crossfades. I feel like they're really trying to like build up the drama. And I mean, it's all like visually incredibly cheesy, but it's just so fun. I don't know, it works.
So should we talk about the big hit from the film, I've Had the Time of My Life?
Let's do it.
So this drove the soundtrack, which ended up selling 16 million in the US, like a ridiculous amount of units. One of the best selling soundtracks of all time. So this song was written by Frank Previte. Sorry, Previte.
For the Continental.
So he was the lead singer of a band called Frankie and the Knockouts, or Frank and the Knockouts. So he wrote this, and I believe he also wrote Hungry Eyes. And once again, did not want to originally do it because he thought this was a porno. But he ended up writing it, obviously, best decision of his life. But they went to Donna Summer and Joe Esposito. They went to Lionel Richie. They went to Daryl Hall. They went to Kim Carnes. And then, like we said earlier, Bill Medley, who ended up singing on the song, turned it down. But ended up doing it with Jennifer Warnes, who is best known for her work with Leonard Cohen.
That's an interesting plot twist. It's just like, who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Honestly, if there, any Leonard Cohen connection is good for me, but
it's just such an odd, like, people's resumes are funny.
Yeah, and growing up with this song, right? Like the song was everywhere, but we also didn't have the internet to be like, oh, who is Jennifer Warnes or who is Bill Medley? Like I had no idea who these people were until we really started researching it. Like probably last week, if you asked me who sang "Time of My Life," I'd be like, I don't know, Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey.
Well, that's why it's successful though, because the film and the singers, it achieved the intention for the song, because like it was written as though like Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze were singing to each other.
Yeah. and it works, right? And Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes have talked about that, about how the sort of joyful notes that they hit in that song, they're real because that's what they were trying to achieve.
They were watching the dancing scene while singing.
So all that is very much they're meant to be stand-ins for the two leads. The other thing that, like, because it's a music movie, it's a dance movie, it's all sorts of things, right? Like, you can't take the music out of it and have it stand. I think the other thing that's really cool about Dirty Dancing is, like, there again are a lot of like really just happy accidents. Apparently that end scene where they do like the very famous lift, they never practiced that because Jennifer Grey was like, I'm not a dancer and I'm afraid of everything, which is perfect.
She was like actually too scared to do it.
She was too scared to do it and thought Patrick Swayze was going to drop her and she was going to break a million bones. So that was like the first and only time that they did the thing.
I again highly recommend reading Jennifer Grey's memoir. It's full of 80s tea that is still hot.
Piping hot 80s tea.
Yeah.
I love it behind the scenes.
And she talks about her relationship with Patrick Swayze because, like, I think the movie lore is that they hated each other, but that's not technically true. She would just get mad at him because Red Dawn, I think, is the movie they were in together prior to Dirty Dancing. And she just, like, she was really young and, like, really trying to take her acting career seriously. Like, she was, like, really, really serious. And he was always, like, breaking character and, like, flubbing his lines and just being kind of silly. And I think and then, like, something else happened in a scene that I don't remember specifically that, like, she held a grudge against him. So when it looked like he was, like, definitely going to get this part, he just, like, took her aside and was like, he, like, apologized from the bottom of his heart. Like, I'm so sorry that I made this harder for you on, like, Red Dawn. And, like, I really think we could do an amazing job on this movie together. But then, like, when they did do the movie, when they did do Dirty Dancing together, he still had that kind of, like, not always taking it seriously kind of energy. And, like, there's other stuff that I'd have to go back and, like, read the memoir, but, like, some of those old tensions resurfaced, and that's kind of what you see in, like, their characters. But, like, she also talks about how incredibly charming he was in life and that everyone was in love with him, and that for that time she was in love with him too. So she, like, loved him and, like, probably at the same time hated him, and that probably is, like, what, like, created this, like, very palpable tension between their characters.
No, that chemistry that they have is very genuine because it's like it's the classic, like, annoyance to relationship sort of.
Yeah.
Like, there is like a lot of tension there. Yeah, it's one of those, like, rarities where you're just like, yeah, this works. And I'm not even like,
sorry, there's a bug. I had to.
Oh, there's a bug.
There's a bug. So
did you slap it with your bare hand?
Fruit flying.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure I said this on the record. My senior prom theme was "Time of My Life," and this was the last song that I heard at my prom.
Your senior prom theme was "Time of Your Life"?
Yeah.
That's great.
And I didn't remember that until you were like, "Hey, let's do Dirty Dancing," and I was like, "What's the big song from that movie, Time of My Life?" I was like, "Oh yeah, prom."
Oh wow. Well, it's like a big prom bat mitzvah wedding song.
Right.
Yeah. What year was your prom? Just out of curiosity.
2000.
Oh, okay. Well, you're only 4 years ahead of me.
Yeah.
We're just talking about our prom songs, and your prom song was "Time of My Life" was the theme. We didn't have a theme for our prom.
I would have preferred not having a theme. I remember, like, asking, like, why are we doing the Dirty Dancing song from our theme? This is the year 2000. And
I also thought you meant "Time of My Life" by Green Day.
Yeah, I was like, are we talking about the Green Day song, or are we talking about the Dirty Dancing? I was like, who, why? That has nothing to do with, like, our high school class. Not that I was, like, super invested in these things, but I was just like.
Did you guys, like, hear this song at all frequently if you attended, like, a wedding or another school dance or a bar or bat mitzvah? Like, when would you hear? Because I remember like I went to a lot of bar and bat mitzvahs in the Northeast of the country, and we always heard like YMCA, just a shitload of 70s songs. It was like because the 90s were obsessed with the 70s,
like
so
YMCA and Funky Town,
and Electric Slide and The Hustle, and we just heard that. Yeah, that's like. But looking back, I mean, it's possible that they play Time of Your Life, but I don't actually remember hearing it very much outside of this movie.
I have a theory that the reason you don't hear it more at weddings is because there's too much pressure. Like, what are you going to do to that song? Are you going to do the whole routine? You can't. It's impossible. So
someone's going to try to do the lift, and they're drunk, and they're going to drop somebody.
Oh, no, 100%.
Someone's going to get drunk dropped.
That would be me. I would try to, like, lift a cousin or something. No, 100%. It's too much pressure. The bar is too high, and I think the level of difficulty is too great.
I do love the end scene, though, where, like, for this one moment, everybody comes together, like the staff and the guests and the like head staff, who in the beginning of the movie is like condescending to and being a jerk to the lower, like it's like there's like this caste system within the Kellerman's Resort staff, and like different races. I mean, it could have stood to be more diverse 100%, because there's one black couple and only they get to dance together, which is problematic today. That being said, like you've got like everyone from everywhere just dances together, the generation divide, which was like feeling like tense throughout the movie, and right before the song starts, you hear like the Kellerman song that just goes on and on and on and on. It's like the song that won't end, because it's like there is like there's a chorus in the Kellerman song, but they just like speak the lyrics in this really annoying. It's not meant to be quality, and it really isn't any good. But it's a very sad song about how like it kind of reflects the owner's feelings of loss, that like this bygone era will no longer, like kids don't want to come with their parents and learn like the mambo or like the Lindy Hop or whatever at like day camp for adults. They want to go to Europe, and they want to like do it, like they want to get out there. They don't want to stay at home. They want to take trips and leave the country. But like for one moment during while this song plays, like it implies how like the looking back and fondness and like nostalgia and memories and like something's ending. But for this one moment in time, everyone's like making that moment together. And yeah, I just love it. I'm probably going to repeat all of this when I do like talk about the song.
I mean, you have to. It's the super happy ending, right? It's like it's the elusive, like that this never happens in real life, but that's the movie magic of it all, is that like everything gets suspended for that one moment in time, and everyone is suddenly like on equal footing through the power of like magic and dance and music.
Yeah. It's so idyllic. Having lived a life now, I'm like, what happens when they leave Kellerman? Are Johnny and Baby gonna stay together? Probably not.
I regret to inform you that I did read a thing that Jennifer Grey is involved in a sequel that talks about this.
And we're not talking about Havana Nights, correct?
No. It's an in-production sequel.
Yes,
currently.
It's currently being made, which is wild to me, because again, like, what the hell? Like, that's so much staying power for people to even have that in their consciousness in 2023. But it is something that she's doing, which obviously Patrick Swayze will not be in. So I'm sure this whole idea of like what happens next is really about Baby's story. I don't want it, I don't think, but I'll try to reserve judgment.
I'm just reminded now of Jennifer Grey and one of my other all-time favorite movies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and how when I met my husband, he loves that movie just as much as I love that movie, and he will frequently, when he's feeling overwhelmed, be like quote Jennifer Grey and be like, I need help.
So wild.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad they're not making a sequel to that movie.
They are
So-
making
I said I'm glad they're not.
Oh,
So
I mean,
We don't need
Spoiler?
to know what happens after that.
Succession is the sequel.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Before we continue with our episode, here's a word from our sponsor.
Enjoy listening to podcasts and ever wonder, can I make a podcast? But it seems so complicated, and good audio production can take time. What if there was a way to create an amazing podcast easily? Well, now there is. Introducing Podcasting Made Easy from Podtastic Audio. My production team will handle your entire audio production, allowing you to be the star of your show. This is Podcasting Made Easy. How easy? Well, so easy, you don't even have to press record. Now that's easy. Your listeners are waiting. Let's deliver. Sign up for a free strategy call today at podcasticaudio.com/easy.
Well, final thoughts.
One last thing that I found that was really funny is the guy who was the soundtrack supervisor. His name was Michael Lloyd. He also produced Time of My Life. He has like a really strange career. Like he's done some big names like Belinda Carlisle and Barry Manilow, but he also like produced a bunch of songs for like kids songs.
Nice.
And then as far as like soundtrack supervision work, you would assume he would, have a bunch of credits there. It's like the Garbage Pail Kids movie from like 1987, and then 1998's Godzilla.
Nice.
Oh,
Well, this song won like a lot of awards, right?
Oscar. It won the Oscar.
It got
Yeah.
best song, Grammy for best pop duo.
Mm-hmm.
The song was obviously one of the biggest, soundtrack songs of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, what'd you do after that? I did some stuff for Barry Manilow, and then Garbage Pail Kids.
I mean, after
And
a
then
song
Puffy
like
and
this, like,
Jimmy Page.
how do you top this? Like, after this
I
song
know.
comes out and, like, does what it does. I mean, I read that, like, this song is such a cool example of a great sync because it was released before the movie came out because, like, Vestron failed to communicate to RCA that they were pushing the movie's release back by a few weeks. So RCA releases the song and it really doesn't do anything commercially. It just kind of looks like a flop. Then the movie comes out, song explodes.
Yeah, which is a big miscalculation in the days before streaming to be like, oh, we're gonna release it now. Oops.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like it's aside of the reference to the movie. If you've maybe never seen the movie and you hear this song, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it has like an impact for you or if it affects you the same way emotionally. I'll never be able to say because the two are so intertwined, which I guess is what
Yeah,
makes it a fantastic artifact of soundtrack making.
One of our In Sync episodes that hasn't come out yet, but we did an episode on Fight the Power and Do the Right Thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like Fight the Power, while it's so inextricably linked with Do the Right Thing, because it like the song and the movie were made like in tandem, like the song was made for the movie, but like I, as a music listener, had listened to Fight the Power a ton before, like just independent of the film, like way well before I saw Do the Right Thing. And like I can think of both pieces of media separately, but I've had the time of my life. Like I will never be able, like if I listen to it aside for like out of context with the movie, like all I will do is think of the movie. I won't think of anything other than Dirty Dancing, and that's fine. That like not every song has to live on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Like these two lift each other up, the film
Literally,
and the song. One is like each one is made better by the other.
that's a fair sentiment, I think.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rachel, so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. If you want to come back and talk about some other soundtracks, we would love to have you.
Oh, yeah.
Always. Yes, please.
How can our listeners find you or your podcast?
In Sync is on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok at the In Sync Pod, I believe. And I am on Instagram, I think at RE Brods, and Twitter and Blue Sky at Rachel Brods. And if you didn't remember any of that, you can just Google me. I'm very SEO friendly.
And we'll put those links in our show notes as well.
Sweet. Thank you for having me.
Oh,
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks for joining us this week on Soundtrack Your Life. Make sure to visit our website, soundtrackyourlife.net, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too.